IKEA AI and the $1.4 billion question. Are we going to see companies retrain workers rather than reduce the headcount?
And if part of my job is going to get taken over by AI, great if you give me opportunity to learn other things. I'd absolutely love that.
AI only creates better outcomes when leadership makes human-centered choices around it.
It's a numbers game. And so somebody first has to prove the case that the business is going to be better off.
There's still plenty of wealth to go around, but it's just how it's going to be allocated now. I think it's just a fundamental reset of the thought processes if you are a CEO.
When your jobs are overtaken by AI, why not retrain as a lawyer and go work for Meta? How much are they willing to spend on settling lawsuits?
Is accountability actually happening, or is it just being priced in?
Telling the truth is just not accepted, especially if it's against a large corporation. Paying a couple of $100 million out a year is, I guess, the cost of doing business.
Hello and welcome to episode 114 of Disconnected. I'm your host, Jag Sharma, joined by my co-hosts Jen Campbell in Hong Kong, Jason Kapadia in Dubai, and Matt Webster in Rio de Janeiro. And together, we'll be delving into the world of AI tech and social media and how it's impacting society and culture. Coming up, Matt brings us a surprisingly hopeful AI story from IKEA, where an AI chatbot took on nearly half of customer inquiries, but instead of mass layoffs, thousands of workers were reskilled into more valuable roles. Jen takes us into two meta stories that feel very connected. Social media companies settle in lawsuits over alleged harm to young people, and a Facebook whistleblower literally sitting in silence on stage because of legal pressure from Meta. And a baffled Jason is looking at the growing backlash against AI. Why would there be a backlash? From protests and data center opposition to a public mood that seems to be shifting from curiosity to hostility. So today we're asking, can AI actually be implemented in a way that helps people? Or are we entering a phase where the social backlash becomes impossible to ignore? Right then, guys, let's get into it. And you know what, Matt, why don't you kick us off today? Because I really like this story. It gives us something that we don't often get in AI conversations, a constructive example.
Thanks, Jag. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to chatting about this one with you guys because I've been feeling a little bit down recently about the amount of AI stories regarding layoffs and taking over the world and Terminator scenarios. So this one, I've just been waiting to talk about a positive one, and this one's brilliant. So it's IKEA AI and the $1.4 billion question. So basically what happened was IKEA, as you mentioned, used AI to automate all of its customer service interactions, and it retrained 8,500 employees into higher value roles. And because of that, it reportedly generated $1.4 billion in additional revenue without any layoffs. So that's the key bit there, without any layoffs. So you've got to love IKEA, and you've got to love, I think in general, the way Scandinavians handle society and the way that Scandinavians seem to have kind of hold on to capitalism without it destroying everything. So what happened was they launched an AI customer service assistant called Billy. It started to handle inquiries, deliveries, order tracking, product availability, common customer questions. And yeah, as you mentioned, Jag, in that intro, around 47% of those interactions they realized were being dealt with by Billy. So IKEA then looked at the questions that the AI couldn't answer, so the 53%. And it wasn't just customers asking, where's my order? There were customers asking, how should I design my room? Will this furniture fit in my room? How should I plan my home office, for example? And they realized, the IKEA top brass realized that this requires human intervention, judgment, creativity, empathy. So instead of doing what most tech bros in Palo Alto would do, which is just see the dollar signs of short term and make all the staff redundant, IKEA retrained 8,500 employees. So they trained them to become interior designers, advisors on interior design, consultants on home furnishing, customer experience specialists. So what IKEA decided to do was realize that the people that they had weren't the problem. It was the repetitive tasks. So instead of going, how many jobs should we get rid of, which is what we normally would be talking about and what we've talked about probably quite a bit on this podcast over the episodes, IKEA took a different direction and said, what higher value work can these people do once AI has removed the boring stuff? And this is the different approach, a fundamentally different approach. And apparently IKEA have got this wider AI strategy, because I delved into this a little bit more. They've got like clear guardrails in this company. For example, they say that there'll be no AI employee surveillance at their company. No hiring decisions will ever be made by AI. So they're using AI and protecting their employees at the same time. So they didn't use AI to replace 8,500 people. They used AI to discover what 8,500 people could be doing instead. So my questions about this amazing blueprint from IKEA is it a blueprint for the future, or is IKEA an exception? Are we going to see companies retrain workers rather than reduce the headcount? Does that come down to the CFO? Does that come down to who sits next to the CFO? And a huge question for me, which I hope you guys can answer positively. Let's see. AI's greatest value automation. Is it uncovering new business opportunities and new roles for people rather than just cutting down the costs? So, yeah, my question to you guys is this uplifting, amazing, thoughtful, human-first IKEA approach an exception, or is it a blueprint for the future with other companies? What do you think?
I absolutely love this. I think it should be the blueprint for the future. I don't think it is, sadly, because I think the reality is not a lot of businesses can do what IKEA have done. But I'd love it if they could. Oh my God, the number of conversations we have at my work where it's like, what are you going to make AI do for you? What process are you going to make better with AI? I don't know. I'm not the expert in this thing. I need someone to either show me, train me, or give me some tools to learn these things, right? And if part of my job is going to get taken over by AI, let's hope so, because a lot of it is very mundane, then great if you give me opportunity to learn other things. I'd absolutely love that. I think it is, like you say, it's the uplifting story everybody's needed. And I think especially for people who work in roles like, customer service, where a lot of it already, chatbots were already coming in a few years back and people were questioning, what do I do next? And I think if people can get their arms around these people and they can retrain them, they're going to have employees for life. Now, you're going to have really motivated employees. I think you're going to have people who really feel valued and value the company for it. And it can only be a positive thing. And if it means, they're getting more business and sales because they've tapped into something they didn't realize before, even better. But even if they don't get that, as long as your revenue's not dropping and it's staying the same, why shouldn't you train people into other roles? Because they could then go make business in other areas and, expand out that way. So I think it's great. I think a big case study should be made about it, and every single CEO in the planet and CFO should be told about it. And this is the way conversations should be happening, rather than tell me what you're going to do to make your job more AI, what you're going to do to make AI, processes bigger and better. Because honestly, it's dull. A lot of people will tell you they don't want their job to be taken over by AI. So why would they come back with, responses to these things, other than Jason, who his whole life currently runs on AI, as we all know? I think people are really daunted by it. So if there's more of these stories, then I think people will feel a lot more secure. They'll feel more motivated. They'll want to go and retrain or learn new skills or be more open to change. But the more you just hear about there being layoffs left, right, and center, people get anxious. And when people get anxious, they double down on, well, my job is important. I need to make myself important. So I'm going to do, the job to the best I can now. And then you don't get change. There's no room for change. So let's hope for the blueprint.
The IKEA model, I think, works perfectly because furniture retail has like this really obvious high value human layer to it, which is the whole interior design thing, right? A lot of people walk into IKEA and they would love to have someone to tell them, oh, this should go here and this should go here. And most of us aren't great at interior design, right? But most other industries, that are implementing AI, customer service, like telecom, banking, utilities, and all of the rest of them, right? They don't have this equivalent creative upselling vertical that absorbs like these thousands of displaced workers. So then, for IKEA, I think it's just the business that they're in. It makes perfect sense for them, and layoffs. They can easily retrain their staff to to do these interior design courses and provide that kind of extra service to those customers. But what's weird is that on the other side, they launched this thing called IKEA Creative, which is basically this advanced AI spatial computing tool that lets anyone basically visualize their room and place the furniture in their rooms as well. So they're attacking both sides. And I think at the moment, this is a great story, but I think it's because we are at a point that AI isn't good enough to do a lot in the physical world just yet, especially interior design, that IKEA looks like the good guys right now. I'm wondering what it's going to look like in, say, 5-10 years' time. Yeah. What do you reckon, Jag?
Most AI stories are framed as replacement stories. AI replaces the worker, AI reduces headcount, AI automates the role, AI makes people redundant. But IKEA seems to have taken a different route, which is wonderful to see. And I think the real lesson here is not that AI creates revenue. It's that AI only creates better outcomes when leadership makes human-centered choices around it. Because the technology didn't automatically reskill people. IKEA chose to do that. And that's the distinction. AI can remove the repetitive work, but whether that becomes unemployment or whether that becomes upskilling is a leadership decision. I suppose question for you, Matt, and the group. Do you think the IKEA model is how companies should use AI, or do you think this is just an exception, a one-off to the rule?
The key thing about this story, though, and to be honest, I didn't quite manage to find out how, but the report says that this switch of moving humans and retraining them generated $1.4 billion in additional revenue. So if that maneuver directly resulted in additional revenue of $1.4 billion, why would that not be replicated in other companies like IKEA, in any company where they see this opportunity, where there's kind of customer service people that can be retrained into other areas? B&Q, I don't know, Home Depot. If it's going to put money on the bottom line like that, they're going to do it, right? And no one got laid off.
Yeah, completely. But do you think companies actually genuinely want to reskill people, or do they just mainly see it as a short cut to lower headcount? I'm thinking about the number of companies that bring in consultancy firms, and the quick shortcut is to lower headcount. Does it take a really headstrong leadership to really genuinely want to reskill their people?
I think that's exactly it. I think it all comes down to the ethos of the leadership and the value of the company, the values of the company. Sadly, it's a numbers game. And so somebody first has to prove the case that the business is going to be better off to do it that way round. Sadly, what I think is happening for most businesses, and I think Jason alluded to it, is that revenue's already dropping in a lot of companies anyway. And so it's cost saving exercises a lot of the time. And actually implementing the tech is cheaper than all the people that are doing the job. So what you'll see is there'll be like a 2-year period where the people still exist and the tech is being implemented. And then suddenly there's a P&L sheet task to be done. And the quickest thing to do is to do headcount cuts. I'd be interested in the IKEA example to see over time of them implementing the tech and retraining the staff, what happened to their profits? Because I'm sure there was a point where it dropped before it went up again. And you've just got, as a business, you've got to be willing to take that, right? It depends how far in advance you're having to, what shareholders and what numbers you've got to report and all that sort of stuff. So I think it's a bit of a mix of, you've got to have a really strong leadership who stand by the values of the company and the people in the company and want to stand up to shareholders and the ones that make the money at the top. And then the reality of not every business is going to make that much more revenue from doing these tasks.
Yeah, I would love it if I just walked into an IKEA and all the retrained staff would just come to me and just say, hey, like, do you have a picture of your bedroom or whatever you're trying to decorate? And then they would just like curate my bedroom for me. Yeah, like exactly what you said, Jen. I do think that it's short term right now, and its future is going to be it's uncertain. But I think that there's still tremendous value from the human input. Right? Most people aren't going to always ask their phones or, the AIs how to do something. So I still think that salespeople will be able to sell IKEA stuff pretty well or better than the AI can do, I think, at least in the short term anyway. So I still think there's tremendous value from the human interaction. So that's not going away.
What I like about this and what I think makes this IKEA example different is that the way they approached it, they had clear boundaries. They went for universal AI literacy or as much as possible. They had role-specific training. They did local experimentation. It was a culture that was already valuing practical problem solving. I mean, that's part of IKEA's DNA. So they didn't just buy AI tools. They built organizational credibility around them. And I wonder if some people listening to this story might wonder if reskilling is a moral argument or a commercial one. But I think I understand where people might get that view, but I think that there's a place for it to be both. I think morally we shouldn't discard people when technology enables us to, but also commercially experienced employees, they carry knowledge, brand knowledge, customer knowledge, and, trust. So I think throwing those people away is often short-sighted, as I predict we'll come to see with many companies that are culling people in favor of AI gains and, shareholder value. Yeah.
I think it's really like the CEOs have to be very creative, and I don't think they've seen the path forward right now. It's just like, oh, well, our business exists like this, and now AI is just taking over this whole section of my cost base, and yay. But, the experts are all predicting that AI is going to triple the GDP of the world. So if that happens, there's still plenty of wealth to go around, but it's just how it's going to be allocated now. I think it's just a fundamental reset of the thought processes if you are a CEO. There's plenty of stuff in probably all companies that humans can do. It's just, having that leadership to be able to understand and deploy in the right way, and, where humans are essential, where AI fits in, because none of them are perfect entities, and, just melding them together, I think, is the best path forward.
So basically what we're saying is, if we've got CEOs and CFOs that are not obsessed with the short term, that are not going to get their heads turned by McKinsey consultants coming in and telling them to cut costs and do a presentation with 40 slides that says cut costs and charge them 300 grand to do so. If we've got CEOs and CFOs that can look in the long term, which isn't that what successful companies do? They look to the long term rather than the quick wins. And if they can do that, and if we've got a leadership team that can do that, then surely we can say now, because of this one story, that the future's looking slightly brighter, that there is a way, that IKEA is showing the way, that humans can be used, that AI can come in and sweep the floors, and the humans can become specialists and probably even earn more and add more to the bottom line of these companies. So it's long-term visionary CFOs and CEOs. And I think there's enough of them because they tend to sit at the top of really successful companies, right?
Yeah, completely agree, Matt. I mean, AI doesn't automatically replace people. Leaders decide whether AI replaces people. So this is a great story from IKEA. And yeah, I think it's a lot of food for thought. And I hope we see and we hear way more examples like this in the coming months. Do you know what, guys? Let's move on from that really nice story that kicked us off. So thanks for that, Matt. Let's move on. And Jen, why don't you take us down the world of whistleblowers and lawsuits and all the goodness that comes from social media these days?
Well, let me seamlessly link our stories together, because when your jobs are overtaken by AI, why not retrain as a lawyer and go work for Meta? Because they, my friends, need an army of lawyers, it seems. And actually, just before we started this, I did a quick Google search, and it's estimated they have 600 lawyers on their staff, and that's just internal, in-house counsel. That doesn't include contractors. So anyway, the reason I'm talking about this is because there have been a couple of stories recently about social platforms, Meta being the center of it. And it's led me to think, how much are they willing to spend on settling lawsuits? So this came initially from a story in America from one of the school districts in Kentucky, and they have just secured a settlement of $27 million in a case with Meta, Snap, Alphabet, so YouTube's parent company, and ByteDance, TikTok's parent company. And they were due to go to trial in June over claims that they were fueling a student mental health crisis, which I think everybody is aware, goes on. We talk about it a lot. Is social media good for kids and, under 16s especially? What kind of impact is it having? But before it even got to court, they settled. And Meta paid the most. They paid $9 million. Snap and ByteDance paid $8 million each. And Alphabet paid just over $2 million. But get this, they also threw in some special training on Google Classroom and other Google tools. Just a nice little sale. I mean, what a good lawyer they had, doing a sales plug at the same time. Retraining. Maybe that's what they were in the middle of doing. Maybe they've retrained from sales into law. Anyway, the others are all claiming, that they're continuing to focus on tools and features that keep everyone safe. But the reality is there are thousands of these cases in, being filed at the moment. I think at the moment there's 1,200 school districts who have filed similar claims. And one of them was interesting. I was reading about, what they were filing against, and they've basically accusing the companies of designing their platforms to keep young users hooked. I think we all knew that. Driving anxiety, depression, self-harm, and leaving schools to deal with the consequences. So that school district was seeking $60 million. But the other one that's huge, so in Arizona, there's one that's due to go to court in February next year, which I'm almost certain won't make it to court, but they are suing for $1.1 billion. And it's to fund a 15-year mental health program, plus $100 million in compensation for the time that teachers and staff have spent managing the impact. So they're now even going beyond, the actual kids that it's impacting, but it is impacting schools and teachers, and, the teachers that do have to deal with the consequences of these things happening. So Meta are acknowledging it. I mean, I think recently there was a warning to investors that due to legal and regulations in the US and the EU is going to significantly impact the business and financial results. And I think that is a nod towards the fact there are more regulations coming into effect. I was doing a bit of a swap back up on how many countries have actually banned social media for under 16s so far. Australia are the only ones who've gone in with a complete blanket ban. Malaysia have also enforced a ban that requires platforms with over 8 million users to block under 16s from having accounts. And Malaysia being Malaysia have put some pretty heavy penalties in place if they don't adhere to it. And then Indonesia have also brought in restrictions in accounts. So anyone who's considered a minor, they can't get full platform access, so they can't do everything within the platform. Austria are due to finalise their under 14s ban within this month in June, so that should come into effect soon. And Matt, you'll know this better than anyone. In Brazil, they brought in the digital statute of children back in March, which requires under 16 accounts to be pegged to a parent or an adult or, a guardian. So countries are bringing in legislations that will stop this. I wonder at some point are the platforms just going to go, okay, this might stop all these lawsuits and I won't have to pay $1.1 billion to a school district for these things. I doubt it. I think they'll settle for about $2 million and the school district will think themselves lucky. But that's not all. They're not all just targeting, it's not schools that are kind of backlashing against them. There was another story that came out. Okay, so picture this. You're at a literary festival. It's in the UK. It's British summertime. You're out on the lawn. You're having a nice little cider, waiting to hear from your favourite author. And the three of them get up on stage in a panel and one person doesn't speak, doesn't move their head, doesn't nod, doesn't get involved in the conversation. They're paying to be there. They say nothing. And this is exactly what happened. So just this year at Hay Festival, which is a literary festival in the UK, there was a lady called Sarah Wynne Williams who has released back in March a best-selling memoir called Careless People, and it details her years working at Facebook. And she was introduced on stage as being in a hostage situation because she wasn't allowed to speak, which I quite enjoyed. And basically, she's been facing mounting legal restrictions since she published her book. So on the night before the book launched, Meta secured a legal order that prevented her from publicly discussing aspects of the book. And if she did, she faced fines of up to $50,000 every time she mentioned bits of the book. And the reason is it contains allegations about Meta's culture and its decision-making, including claims relating to its political influence. So, I mean, does it not speak volumes that they are trying to put legal action against her when she speaks about these things? I mean, it says more about the culture than anything else. But what is totally mad, so they brought in the kind of legal restrictions when she published, but part of the sanctions they published say that she violates the order anytime she appears in public in a place where she should know that her book is available for sale because she brings awareness to it. And so the way she got around that on the Hay Festival is that they removed the book for sale from the festival. So you couldn't physically buy the book at the festival. And so she was allowed on stage, but she still couldn't talk about the book because she'd have been fined $50,000. Think how hard these Meta lawyers are working for every single one of these cases. It's wild to me. And yet this is just stuff that's come out in the press. There's probably even more going on. So I'm quite astonished by it. I don't know about you guys. It doesn't leave me with a good taste in my mouth about Meta. Not that I had one particularly anyway. But what are your thoughts? Do you think they care? Do you think this is just going to keep going on?
So for me, these two meta stories, they feel like they belong together because they both point to the same deeper issue: accountability. On the one side, you've got school districts suing social media companies, saying the platforms contributed to mental health crisis. And on the other side, you've got a whistleblower sitting silently on stage, can't even speak about her own book. And I think what's striking to me is the asymmetry of power. These platforms shape culture, behavior, attention. They shape childhood, politics, relationships. But when people try to challenge them, the response often becomes legal, technical, procedural, or evasive. The companies say they care about safety. They say they have tools. They say they have safeguards. But when settlements happen with no admission of liability, no admission of anything, no requirement of any change within the platforms, for me, it raises a question of, is accountability actually happening, or is it just being priced in? And the whistleblower story adds that whole other layer, because if someone worked inside the system and they're legally prevented from speaking freely about it, then the public conversation can become distorted. You know, we talk about platform harming in theory, but the people with direct knowledge are silenced. And that feels uncomfortable. Yeah, those are my initial thoughts.
You know, it makes me think about, is there going to be a world where, you know, telling the truth is just not accepted, especially if it's against a large corporation? They're continually getting bigger and bigger in terms of financial resources and influence. And I wonder if now whistleblowing is going to just completely disappear, well, mostly disappear. And, you know, we're going to just see a rise of dark leaks where insiders are going to get this type of information and just kind of publish it on the dark web. And then it's going to filter into the public sphere from there. And then, you know, instead of, you know, you having to go to Congress and testify and, you know, do all this type of stuff, it's just going to all be anonymous. I guess, you know, it seems like there was a lot more in the 2010s, anonymous leaks and all that type of stuff. And now it seems that these corporations have, I don't know, they've managed to contain that as well. You don't get as many leaks of this type of information, but maybe it's going to go into that way in the future. I don't know. The only thing is that if you do go down this, you know, you get some insider information and it looks disturbing, you release it on the dark web, and then, you know, you can't verify it and use it in open court to try to get any of these type of settlements. Maybe that's the reason why it's not really being used right now. And, these settlements, they're getting, a good amount of money out of it. And the lawyers are really, benefiting the most, I guess, out of all this type of stuff. So, and that's pretty crazy. And also the other thing is, for decades, these social media companies have relied on Section 230. And, now I guess the new world going forward is that these social media companies can't engineer their algorithms to be so addictive to young people. But that's against their business interests. So that whole conflict, I just don't know which way it's going to go. The lawyers are going to keep on trying to get that money, and the and Meta just, the market cap just keeps on ballooning into the trillions. And so, paying a couple of $100 million out a year is, I guess, the cost of doing business.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Jason. They need that addictive quality to their platforms because that's a huge part of why they're so successful. So that's why they're defending it with these lawyers and doing the payouts before it gets to court. A couple of things for me is, first of all, I'm thinking maybe I become a lawyer for educational institutes because 100 million for teachers' time spent dealing with students that are having mental issues because of social media. That seems like a pretty good deal. And it seems like a lot of these, Jen, as you mentioned, there's a lot of settlements. So if it's just a case of kind of putting a case forward and getting these kind of settlements, then maybe let's go on a road trip, train up as lawyers and go around all the schools on Route 66 and get rich. The other thing that pops out for me with this is these corporations are just getting bigger and bigger, as you said, Jason, and along with that comes their power. And I'm sorry to bring in a sci-fi reference, but I can't help it. I don't know if you watched Alien Earth, but Alien Earth has got 5 mega corporations that rule the Earth. In 2099, Weyland-Yutani, Prodigy Corporation, Threshold, etc. Are we heading towards that kind of scenario where the world is pretty much just owned by 5 corporations?
I'm okay with that as long as one of them's IKEA. That's my only caveat.
Nice. Yes, I'm with that. Yeah, they can own Europe and Latin America, please.
Jen clearly didn't see Alien Earth because you wouldn't want to live in that world. Certainly not for sure. Even if IKEA was one of the 5 companies. Not enough episodes of Alien Earth, and they'll take years to make another season. The question on this for you, Jen, and for everyone. Do you guys think Meta is becoming too powerful to criticize effectively? Is it that for me, maybe they're not impossible to criticize, but it's expensive and it's difficult, and then legal pressure can shut you down or stop you speaking or, even giving criticism when it's in the public interest? And then I wonder even if democratic systems can meaningfully scrutinize, Meta or all companies of this scale. So you just wanted to get your thoughts. Do you think Meta are becoming too powerful to criticize effectively?
It's funny you should say it because I, for no reason other than just my own thinking, there's no data behind it, but I don't think they're as big as they have been. I don't think this is probably the worst Meta have been. And because they're now sharing culpability with other platforms, like they paid 9 million in this lawsuit to the schools, but Snap and ByteDance also paid 8 million. So they're not far off, right? So I don't think it's even just Meta. I think once upon a time, this case would have been brought to just Meta, and it's not the case anymore. I think it's kind of being shared out. Do I think people are going to be able to stop them? Honestly, I think they'll just keep paying. Like you say, it's the cost of business. I think regardless of what case you bring, it'll either go to court because they think they can win it, or they will settle. And I always think them settling has got to be, there's at least a smidge of proof in there somewhere that they then can't fight. So I don't know. I think this is just going to keep going. I think they just build it into business costs and be done with it.
When you say on the smidge of proof, do you think that smidge of proof could be that they are responsible for, the mental health consequences of their platforms? And
I don't think they can deny the scrolling thing. I don't, like you say, that's their whole business is built behind an algorithm that keeps people in a platform. So I think they would be very, very difficult to fight that. Even if they said, for kids, we dial it down a bit, but how much is enough? Who makes that decision?
Yeah. But isn't everything in life designed to keep us doing more. Even before the internet, didn't TV stations do their schedules to keep us watching? Don't touch that dial now, because we got whatever Michael Barrymore going on.
Yeah, but they had to throw the news in as a break, so everyone switched off then anyway.
Michael
Don't
Barrymore.
touch that dial, because Strike It Lucky's coming up next. The thing is, you can't walk down the street with Strike It Lucky in your pocket, can you? That was the difference there. These things are following the kids around wherever they go.
Okay, what about video games before the internet? You really wanted to complete all 96 levels on Super Mario World. There was a shortcut via level 11, but not everyone knew that. I knew it, but not everyone.
Yeah, definitely. I think that the main difference is, they would try to make a product that's addictive as much as possible, but that one product or that one show had to go out, or that one channel, only literally had that stream or that product, and everyone consumed at the same time. The world we're living in today is one where the algorithm is constantly adapting based on every scroll that you make and every user interaction you have, and it's just like constantly adapting to your own profile to make it as addictive as possible, as we've talked about a lot before. But that's just what makes it just so much more powerful than in previous decades.
Also, in your example, Jag, it would be like Wario texting you even after you'd finished playing the game, saying something kind of underhand, or showing you a picture of his new trainers that it left. Once you left the room, you left the experience, and that's the major drawback with social media. These kids can take it wherever they go. Wario's texting them wherever they go.
I mean, the direction Nintendo's going in, you might have given an idea there, but yeah, I get your point. I do get your point, Matt. Yeah, I guess we've answered it there. We've answered a question we didn't really ask, but I think the question would be, should social platforms, including Meta, be legally responsible for the mental health consequences of their design choices? And I think from our discussion, it seems because of the power they wield, and Jason's point about the algorithm changes faster than the brain can cope with, we are mere mice to these algorithms. They are just like cats playing with us, having fun in between their meals. Do you know what, guys? I think we'll move on, because we got another story after this, if that's all right. Let's move on. But Jen, thanks for that. And I think, when the person who knows the story the best is forced to sit in silence, the silence becomes the story. And with that, let's move on to a baffled Jason, who's wondering, why on earth are people so against this wonderful AI, like the greatest invention since Elon Musk?
It is. Now, to be honest, I'm not surprised. I made the prediction that there would be some kind of large-scale protest of AI, if you remember on our predictions episode at the beginning of the year. But that hasn't happened yet. I'm still waiting. But just to kind of back up why I'm feeling it's going to happen, we're seeing it play out right now. Everyday Americans feel like they're under siege, and they're kind of hitting back hard, right? And it's not just talking about online complaints. We're seeing booed commencement speeches by top tech CEOs, Molotov cocktails being thrown at CEOs' homes, and bullets fired in city council members' doors, right? And the primary target right now is the physical backbone of the industry, right? So polls show that 71% of Americans are now actively opposing building AI data centers in their local area. And nearly half, 48%, are strongly opposed. And they're looking at the massive resource strain, the noise, the strain on the power grids, and they're saying I just don't want a part of this, right? And it's not just about making the noise and saying I'm not happy with it, right? The thing is, it's actually choking the whole supply chain, right? And the issue is, NVIDIA are selling a huge amount of these AI chips, and they're just sitting in warehouses right now because the data centers are just not being built quick enough because of permitting and all this massive opposition to it by everyone, and especially in the States. Data Center Watch reports that local opposition has blocked or delayed 48 massive data center projects in this last year alone, and it's cost the industry about $156 billion. And obviously that's chump change compared to, the valuations of these companies. But it seems like the momentum is accelerating, and there's going to be another, or it's forecast to be another 20 major projects cancelled in just the next quarter, right? And so I can kind of understand, why people are, they feel this sense of apprehensiveness on, like, is my job going to be there in a couple of years? Everyone's talking about all the doomerism. But the thing is that I wonder if this is going to cause a massive, detriment to the West, because, American activists are, trying to store these data centers, but China is pushing ahead at warp speed, and Beijing doesn't need to deal with local zoning boards, public protests, or NIMBY pushback. They're really pushing hard to build out these massive compute clusters, and their whole nationalized grids are just completely prepared with really cheap energy, like we've been talking about before. But the thing is, right, my question is, right, is that do you think that these protests are kind of engineered? Do you think that the algorithm by the enemies of the West is kind of pushing this to slow the West down in AI advancements? Because all the experts say that, whoever creates this AGI, ASI first is going to, have a massive lead on everyone else, and can kind of change the world that they will if they have this type of tech. So do you think that this is actually rational, or do you think it's been manufactured by the West's enemies?
Oh, Jason. Jason. It's I think it's rational. And I think it's rational because the assumption from AI firms has been that people may be nervous, but eventually they'll come around. But we're seeing something different here in that, people are worried. People are worried about the very foundations of their future, because in the past, whenever there's been economic downturns, whether it's just, a bad economic cycle, or if there's geopolitics involved, like various wars, people can see an end date to it, and they can give a reason as to why, they might have less money in the bank, or they might be between jobs. But when something comes to shake the very foundations, in that everything you've been doing and working on for all these years may no longer exist anymore, and you will no longer have a purpose to exist, I think that is the major reason why people are protesting data centers, why communities are resisting infrastructure projects, why there's anger about energy, water, jobs, kids, schools, copyright, whether ordinary people are being asked to absorb the costs of an AI future that they didn't choose. And I think the key phrase here is that people feel under siege, personally under siege, under attack. That's powerful, because the AI industry often talks about the future in abstract terms: productivity, innovation, superintelligence, transformation. But people experience it very concretely. High energy demand, construction disruption, environmental concern, and the big one, job anxiety. And so, yes, maybe there's a next big phase of AI, but I think it's not about capability. I think the next big phase is about consent. It's not, can we build it, but it's who agreed to this? So yeah, I don't think it's the enemies of the West, Jason.
I kind of buying into that conspiracy because
don't. He loves a conspiracy theory.
Come on, Cambridge Analytica. We look back at that. We've got to learn from that. We've got to consider that, and that was a while ago. But no, I'm gonna lean a bit more towards Jag though, because it's relentless and it's really bad PR. It's consistently terrifying. If it's not about the actual, will the world exist? Will there be apocalypse of that scale? It's all the way down through to, am I going to have a job next week? And is my kid going to study something that's a waste of time? That's really powerful. I saw my daughter doing some homework the other day, and I was really proud that, I've got this daughter who's doing well academically at school. She's still really young. But then I had a little tweak in my brain that would have never happened before 2022, where I thought, but does it really matter that she's academically astute? Because in the past, her being good at school would have given her a chance to do some cool stuff in life. Does that chance exist anymore? And finally, the bad PR, it's not just from the doomers and from news organizations and conspiracy theorists. It's the actual founders themselves. Sam Altman recently did an interview, and the worried interviewer was like, do we know what's going to happen with AGI and superintelligence? Is that something that we should be concerned about? And Sam Altman did a really bad PR on it. He just basically was honest and went, yeah, we don't know what's going to happen. It might not be good. It might be good. We're not sure. But you're going to plow on with it anyway. Yeah, we are. Why? Because China. The race to AGI, the race to superintelligence. It's like, okay, the world might end, but at least we'll end it first before Beijing does. Really bad PR. So that's why the IKEA story got us so uplifted at the beginning of this podcast.
The reason I lean into this conspiracy a bit more is that would you not want your team to win, right? If you were developing these, I don't know, you're going to go to space, you're going to do whatever else, like any of these technologies that you could dream of when you were a kid, wouldn't you want your country to win at it? I know since the whole computer revolution there's been massive displacements of jobs, right? And in previous episodes, we've talked about loads of examples, but I guess right now it's like slightly more existential on your values as well, because, the values of your country are going to be incorporated into the AI's way of thinking. So look, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with China's way of thinking, but, if China does win the AI race, it means that they get to kind of potentially determine a bit more of what happens in your future, right? And no, I totally get it. I think it's mainly about, jobs uncertainty. Matt, I totally resonate with your point in terms of just thinking like what our kids going to do. I've been kind of struggling with that at the moment, but I think mainly in school, you can't really forecast what type of job they're going to have in, next 5 years. I don't even know if half those jobs would exist in the same way. But if you bundle up a job, it's just a collection of tasks, right, that you would do on a daily, weekly basis. It's just a bunch of tasks, right? I just think that what you cling on to as a job role is just going to change. Those tasks that you do, that bundle of tasks, are just going to morph into another set of tasks that are slightly different, where you have the advantage over AI in certain things like taste and a few other things that the AI isn't that great at, and where you can provide value. And, when I see my daughter now use Claude, and I'm trying to supercharge her on Claude, I'm actually trying to, like, everyone around me, whoever asks me, I literally go into, get onto the computer, install Claude Code or Codex, and show them what it is capable of now. And it's like, it actually is hugely transformational to your life if you actually go to understand and learn how to use the AI, because it doesn't mean, okay, yes, you can get rid of people's jobs, but it also means that you can do so much more in your day, and you could do things that you could only dream about before in terms of productivity if you're in the right type of sectors. No, I'm not talking about blue collar type work right now. So, but yeah, anyway, just going back to the main point is that wouldn't you want your team to win? If you don't want data centers in your backyard, fair enough, but then you're just kind of pushing the winners to go somewhere else. And, Bernie Sanders is saying, they want to take 50% of ownership in Anthropic and OpenAI and a bunch of these other top AI companies, and kind of be owned by the state. And maybe that might be like a decent idea to the public, but then those companies are just going to shift overseas, right? And they're not going to want to get eaten up by the American taxpayer. So yeah.
Okay, let's explore this a bit more in detail. How theoretically would you say I don't know how you coined it, the opposition of the West, how are they interfering in this theory of yours?
No, I'm just saying, like, if you believe in like election interference and those type of things, I mean, like, look at it at the moment. United States are the dominant data center a powerhouse of the world, right? They have, I think, like 5,500 massive data centers, whilst China only have 450, but they're rapidly growing, right? And the private AI investment in the United States is just way above everyone else at the moment. But the whole regulatory environment and all this public backlash and all of that stuff, it just makes it more of an incentive to kind of shift somewhere else that, will be much more friendly towards AI. Because if you don't have a collar around your neck and you can just develop the AI, theoretically you'll hopefully be able to come out with more productive and the best AI that's possible, right? So I'm just saying that maybe it's just a whole combination of things, but I think it would be a good, if you were China, or if you were one of these other competitors to the West and you wanted your AI to win, you need to slow down your competitors, right? So, pushing out or promoting the reels and content that is kind of anti-data center to the right demographic, I think it would be a sound strategy.
So through social media content and messaging, you think that it could be happening?
Yeah, definitely, for sure. I mean, that's the best way to get these type of ideas.
There'll definitely be lobbyists as well.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, they'll be having lemon soul and champagne with the Meta lawyers, chatting about the world's downfall together.
I mean, nothing's impossible, but it comes back to potentially our earlier conversation. If social media is causing all these challenges, so for Jen's story earlier around mental health and, all of that stuff for people, and then if we come back to what Matt pointed out about, social media influencing people's behavior to do or to not do something, Cambridge Analytica encouraging a certain demographic of people not to vote in the 2016 election, and then also in Brexit as well, to vote a certain way or to not bother voting, not bother turning up, then yeah, it's certainly not out of the realms of possibility that social media could be used for other things as well, swaying people's opinion politically, geopolitically, religiously, and, in this case, being anti-data center, they're going to take your jobs, so you should be against it. I can't do the South Park took your jobs accent voice thing, but that's what I was going on in my head. Yeah, and it's possible. I don't know though. I think my view on it is, I think there's enough genuine concern that isn't getting answered by the bigwigs of AI. We're not hearing, the Sam Altmans of this world come out with concrete, reassurances. He comes across as someone that necessarily doesn't think about people's futures specifically, or, their well-being.
And I think that the reason why that's happening right now is they're just trying to beat out everyone else. So it's like this mad fight at the top, and they're desperately trying to win, and so they're doing whatever they can. But as soon as there's one that's an actual leader and it's a clear leader, I'm sure that the rhetoric will change, and it will kind of be this more caring and, oh, don't worry, we're going to look after you, and we're going to help retrain you, and we're going to do all that type of stuff. And I think that's coming around the corner, meaning maybe 6 to 12 months. But look, I just want to iterate one point, right? China, they can build a full data center within 6 months, right? And you compare that to 1 to 2 years in the US, right? So yes, the US has 10 times more data centers, right? But China can rapidly catch up. And if you look at the West and Europe, right, it's like, what's happening there? Like, where's all the AI labs and the frontier in Europe? It seems like they're completely just, I don't know, given up, it seems. But the human capital is still great, especially in London, where DeepMind, where Google, its main AI development center is. But just, the whole data center thing. And I guess, and Elon Musk talking about putting data centers in space, maybe this is the only way to get around to all this type of permitting and all that type of stuff to beat China.
Data centers in space.
Interesting times.
Sounds like a plot for a movie, maybe a future Star Wars movie. Anyway, thanks for that, Jason. You know what? I think the next AI bottleneck, it may not be chips or models, it may be public trust. But yeah, I think we'll leave it there, Jace. Thanks for that story. And you know what? I think we'll wrap up today, guys. I think across all three stories, IKEA, Meta, anti-AI backlash, is the future of AI going to be decided by the technology itself or by whether people believe the companies building it can be trusted? Thank you, Jen. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Jason. Thank you, listeners. This has been episode 114 of Disconnected, and we'll see you on the next one.